Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate The Hate podcast. I am your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. Each week, I'm sharing stories from my path and using the power of conversation and collaboration with my many great guests. Together, we chart a course toward understanding, bridging divides, and fostering a community where wisdom prevails over discord. Friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. The only good thing about a bad attitude is we have the ability as individuals to change it. For me, it starts with gratitude and personal accountability. I am so incredibly grateful that you have taken the time to join me for another powerful DTH episode. Please remember to subscribe and share the DTH podcast with your network of friends. If you would like to support the show, check out the Support Us page on the Derate The Hate website. With that, my friends, let's get to it. My guest this week is no stranger to the Derate The Hate audience. Jeff Schoep, once the leader of the largest neo-Nazi organization in America, is now one of the world's most sought-after voices in deradicalization and counter-extremism. Jeff has joined me on this podcast before to talk about his transformation, but this conversation takes things even deeper. He's just released his powerful new memoir titled American Nazi: From Hate to Humanity. The title alone is intentionally provocative, and for good reason. In this episode, Jeff opens up about the personal journey that took him from a violent underworld of radical extremism to a path of redemption, healing, and service. We dive into what initially drew him to Nazism, his rapid rise to leadership in the National Socialist Movement, and the deeply painful experiences that started to crack the armor of hate he had built around himself. From surviving assassination attempts to forging unexpected relationships that helped change his worldview, Jeff's story is raw, it's real, and necessary. But this isn't about Jeff's past. It's about a sobering look at how identity politics and unchecked fear can serve as gateways to radicalism, regardless of ideology. Jeff now uses his story to help others break free from extremist beliefs, and in doing so, he's making powerful strides in the fight against hate in all of its forms. Get ready, friends. This conversation is about darkness, redemption, and the urgent need for understanding in an increasingly divided world. Here we go. Jeff Schoep, man, how are you, brother? It's good to see you. Welcome back to the Derate The Hate podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Wilk. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's always good to see you, my friend. We haven't done anything in a little while, and just so the DTH listeners know, you've got a book that's coming out soon. I believe sometime in late June of this year, you'll have a new book coming out, and I wanted to bring you on to highlight that book. Looks like an incredible story, an account of your life from what I'm seeing, and I just wanted to bring you in again here on the DTH podcast to see what's been going on with you, talk about the book. I know you've been doing an incredible amount of traveling around, speaking, working with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, things like that. So we'll get a handle on all that and see what's going on. So thanks again, man. I appreciate you joining me today. So
thank you.
Yeah. So all right. So Jeff, the book that's coming out, and anybody who's been listening to the DTH podcast for a while knows you already. You've guest hosted an episode for me. You've been a guest on the podcast here 3 or 4 times, and we've done a number of things together. So just quick backstory: Jeff Schoep, former radical American neo-Nazi, somebody who has basically worked through a lot of those past indiscretions and now has become one of the most sought after deradicalization experts in the nation, right? And now you've got a book coming out about it called American Nazi: From Hate to Humanity, which is a fantastic way to put it, hate to humanity. And Jeff, let's start with the title. Let's start with the title and how you came up with that title and what people are going to find in this book.
So, thank you again. And so the title, American Nazi from Hate to Humanity, I felt like using the N word in the title was a marketing idea, basically, because that's one of those things where if you're walking by and you see that on the bookshelf, you see that out there, or you're thumbing through stuff online, you got to stop and look because it's
Mm-hmm.
ugly. It's hateful, it's ugly, and everybody knows what a Nazi is. So you look at that, and then you see from hate to humanity. With American Nazi, this is, I got to see what this is. I need to pick this up and take a look at it. And basically what it is a memoir. I go through starting at the beginning. Well, it starts with a flash forward, which is a pretty violent chapter of an experience that took place and dealing with somebody that had tried to set me up to get murdered. And so that's how the book starts out. And it's pretty violent. And, we just dive right into it. And then after the flash forward, we go into, it starts at the beginning and goes through my childhood and then into some of the things that took place, the rise into leading the National Socialist Movement and my life involved in that world. So it's pretty violent. It's a pretty violent book and a lot of emotion. It took a lot of time to write it. I put a lot of time, years it took to write it, because originally when I got it done, it was like 800 pages or something, 6 or 8 pages. It was incredibly long. And I started shopping it around to different book agents and literary agents, and they were all like, this is double the length it should be. So it took another year to kind of decide which chapters were not really necessary, which could be shortened up, and then got it down to size, and then started shopping it around again. And at that point, I started getting offers like crazy. People were interested in the story, and I found a publisher rather quickly that took on the book, and they said, this is such an important story, we've got to rush it out, because typically it takes a couple years once you get a book deal, and it takes at least a year, maybe 2 years sometimes before it comes out. And I had secured the publisher in January of this year, and the book is coming out June 24th. So they put a rush on it, and it's coming out. So it's pretty
Well,
exciting.
yeah, that's incredible, man. And I've got to agree with him. I mean, it's an incredibly important story. You know, you and I have had so many conversations about your backstory and how, I guess, the fascination as a young child and growing up, that fascination with the Nazis and the Third Reich and then just the ugliness that came along with it. But then so remind me, Jeff, or remind the listeners, how old were you when you first actually became affiliated with the National Socialist Movement, and then at what age did you actually take control as the leader of the NSM?
So, I mean, the fascination with Nazism started when I was in about fourth grade. My grandfather fought in the Hitler's army during World War II. My great uncles fought. My mother came over from Germany. My grandparents did as well after the war. And by the time I joined the movement at around 18, and within a couple of years, I was running the organization by 20, 21, somewhere around that age. So it was a rather quick rise up through the ranks, and detailing some of the things that took place during that time, everything from law enforcement setups and infiltration, to some of the internal violence in the group, some of the fighting in the streets with Antifa and things of that nature. And it's really, I took care to change names and everything like that, so nobody's being doxxed or anything. There's a few public figures that are named in there, but the vast majority of the people, everything that's named is, I've changed names and things like that to protect people's privacy. So that was important to me in telling the story. And it's not all just a retelling of old horrors and terrible things that happened. There is a redemptive arc, as you know. I felt like that was really important to include. Not just tell how it was, but how I got out and the change and heading towards the good work and things that I'm doing now as well.
Yeah. No, and I think that's hugely important. Obviously, there, this would definitely not be complete without knowing about the catalysts or the I know it wasn't just one, but obviously the most influential catalyst for your transformation was your now relationship with Daryl Davis and how that got started. And if anybody wants to relive that episode where I had Daryl and you on talking about the meeting at the diner for accidental courtesy, so that's an incredible episode. They can step back and the link to that episode will obviously be in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, just an incredible tale, a heartfelt tale, and how two unlikely people became such close friends, and you guys are like brothers now, and yeah, Daryl is an incredible figure. Let's talk a little bit about, you said you go into in the book, Jeff, you go into some of the uglier tales, the ugly side of that radical lifestyle and some of the infighting. I know you and I have talked a lot about the paranoia that came along with being in the movement and how that worked. And then this culminated in people actually trying to set you up to be murdered. Let's unpack a few of those things a little bit more, because I think that's going to be important for people to understand that this is not any kind of a glamorous lifestyle. There's not a lot of smiles and happy times. This is just a whole bunch of ugly. So let's unpack a little bit of that for me, would you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where to even begin because there's so much, and there was so much that I didn't include as well. But one thing that really stands out was one of the assassination attempts. I say one of them. There was several, but
Mm-hmm.
one in particular where I was struck in the back of the head with a tire iron, and I still have the scars today from that. And that happened back in the '90s. But it was someone that had infiltrated the organization, and I do tell this story in the book, so I won't give it all away. But it was, they had come in and pretended to be involved in the organization. The one individual did, and the other individual was a guest, somebody that he had brought along for us to go pass out literature that evening in Rochester, Minnesota, actually. And we had went down there and come back, and the guy struck me in the back of the head as I was bending down into the trunk of a vehicle, struck me in the back of the head with one of those 4-pronged tire irons. And as he hit me, it was anti-Nazi or anti. It was anti-racist action back then. It was before Antifa, but struck me in the back of the head and said, we're here to kill you." And lucky for me, I didn't get knocked out. And I just remember everything like flashed white.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't even know what happened because I was bending down into the trunk to reach a box of merchandise that we had brought along. And as I bent down, that's when he hit me and said, anti-Nazi, we're here to anti-Nazi league or anti whatever he said, we're here to kill you. And the guy that was with me, my roommate, he blocked a second hit, which I didn't find that out until afterwards, but he had blocked the second hit. If the guy would have hit me again, I would have been dead for sure. It split my head open. I remember stumbling backwards after getting hit and putting my hand to the back of my head, and it felt like a wet sponge, like pressing into a wet sponge, because my whole scalp was hanging down the back of my head. It was you hear about people being scalped back in the old west days. I
Mm-hmm.
actually know what that feels like because my skin off the back of my head was all hanging down,
Just
and it was
peeled
split
back.
open to the skull. It was brutal. And so that experience is in there, along with a number of other incidents that took place like that. But that's just that's just one. That's why I say I don't even know where to start, because there's so many things like that that took place. And as you said very well, there's nothing glamorous about being involved in this. And the fact that I'm still alive today, I consider it a miracle. So if there's young people out there that are looking at these groups thinking they're cool or they should be involved in it, the fact that I'm here today, I feel like is a miracle in and of itself, because most people don't make it that long. And after 27 years, and especially being in the position that I was, a lot of this stuff, I even in my talks, that I do, I haven't brought this stuff up because I was waiting for the book to come out and to share some of these memories and things like that took place over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just when you live a life of hate, there's nothing positive that's going to come of that. And I see so many people today that are just consumed by hate for people that they do not know. They don't know anything about, and I know our friend Daryl talks a lot about that. How ignorance is one of the leading drivers of fear, and then that fear is what leads to the hate. It's just that we don't know is often a leading driver for that hate. So then, as you were going through these several years, Jeff, of leading this, Nazi American neo-Nazi organization, what kept you going in this? I mean, because again, well, for me, I mean, the constant anger, the hate, the things like that stuff is exhausting. What was it, do you think, that drove you to keep going for so long in that organization, and then now being somebody who is actively or one of the most active people working towards de-radicalization? How do you use I guess my question is, how do you use whatever that driving force was then as a tool to then do what you do now in the de-radicalization space? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah. Basically it's a reverse osmosis process. So it's the same skill set that I used for the wrong things to bring people into that movement, I use now to help get people out. So it's like I was the venom, I was the poison, now I'm the antidote. That's the way I see it. And it's just repurposing a mission. How I stayed so long is looking back, I wish I wouldn't have. Obviously, there's a lot of regret, guilt,
Right.
and shame. But what the driving force is that I believed I was doing something honorable and noble, and it was having that purpose and that mission in life. So once I realized it was wrong what I was doing, and that it wasn't something that I should be a part of, or that anybody should be a part of, I felt like, how can I fix this? And that led to the work that I'm doing today. So having that mission and purpose it's just been reverse osmosis, and now doing good with that same skill set, because that's what I thought about when I was leaving. It's like, well, what can I do to fix this? What is it? What could you possibly do to fix this? Because I put a lot of negativity and a lot of hate out into the world for a very long time, and brought a lot of people into that organization. I took a very small organization and built it up into what was the largest organization of its kind in the country. So, there's people that say, well, you shouldn't be out there doing this work. If you were involved in this stuff, you should be out as long as you were in. Well, you know what? Should I wait till I'm 80 years old to do something? No, I can do something right now. And I have the skill set, I have the understanding. And because I lived that was my whole adult life until early 2019 when I left. So it's like, what do I know better than anything? That life. So how can I repurpose it? And how can I fix things? And I've helped countless people get out of that life. And not just that, but curiously, one thing that I learned before when I started doing this work is when I first started, I thought, the far right, the neo-Nazism and that sort of thing was unique, that I could just help people get out of that. But what I've learned is that the social structures of other groups, whether they're cults, whether it's far left, whether it's far right, religious extremism, groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, things like that. And even to a lesser degree, gangs as well fit into this category. But cults, far left, far right, I can help people come out of all these things because the social structures of these movements are the same. All the ideologies are totally different and they're all over the place. But the social structures, the way people hold on to these belief systems and the way they entrap people in these groups and the way they hold them in these groups is very, very similar. And like I say, the gangs, there's a little bit of a different caveat there, and there's some differences because sometimes they're motivated by criminality and things of that nature. But there's so many crossovers. We can help people get out of all of those different things and help people, see things differently and have conversations and change their lives just like I did. If somebody that can go from that sort of extreme to being a neo-Nazi leader to being a peace builder through these processes, the processes that I learned from Daryl Davis and others, I mean, we can do so much more with it, and that's what we're out here doing. And it's incredibly, it's a good feeling to be really truly doing something noble.
It's incredibly important, and then to use that life experience, to use the real life part of it. I mean, you're not talking about these things in theory, Jeff. These are things that you've lived, and again, you've got that skill set, right? You don't rise to the level that you were at in any organization, even if it's a hate organization. You don't rise to that level in an organization without a strong set of skills that make people gravitate to you. The idea that you've been able to turn that around and use those skills for good is one of the coolest and greatest stories that I've ever known. I use that as an example in a lot of the talks that I give and people that I talk to. I recently had a conversation. I want to take this and then we'll bounce back to the book, right at the end of the conversation. But I want to kind of tie in this to a couple things that are happening in real time right now. Because again, we live in times that are just, definitely in certain circles, there's just way too much hate and a lot of ugly things that we're seeing in society today driven by hate. I recently had a conversation, and I first want to get your thoughts on this and your ideas on this, because this is something that came up on the podcast recently. We were talking with a young man named Hunter Ash. He's part of what some people would call the dissident right, the woke right. We were talking about white identity politics. Part of what I talked with him about, he was on with Julian Adorni on the podcast recently, and we were talking, and I said, anything that drives an us versus them mentality, anything that drives that wedge in and either starts or exacerbates that us versus them mentality, I don't see as good. And like I say, you can't fight hate with hate. You cannot fight identity politics, in my opinion, with identity politics. What are your thoughts on what some people are now calling the woke right, or white identity politics, and the dissident right is what they're calling it? I don't see it as a right wing thing, but that's just me. But what are your thoughts on that, real quick?
Well, I see this having this identity stuff and this wokeism. I see it as a form of extremism, and what we see is there's a technical term for it called reciprocal radicalization, and it's like the answer, one side pushes against the other. So if you have we like to be in the middle somewhere, or we can be right or left, that's fine. But when you start getting out onto the extremes, that's where they start pulling more people away from the middle out to these extremes, and they're making everything about identity. And I can tell you a couple of times when I've had the experiences in the work that I do now, where I'm crossing paths with people that are into the woke stuff. Honestly, and I'm going to be very careful how I say this, but to me, it reminds me of the movement. Because they're like, you have to see my blackness, or you have to see my whiteness or my brownness. And it's like, no, and I actually had somebody get upset with me when I had given a speech somewhere, and I won't say where because this has only happened to me. I've given hundreds of speeches across the country, and this only happened to me like twice. But was talking about Daryl Davis and our friendship and our brotherhood, and I said in the talk specifically, I said Daryl Davis I don't see Daryl Davis as a black man. He's my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we see race. I'm not blind. I see that he's black. That's not the point. I said I don't see him for his race. I see him as a brother.
Right.
And I was told afterwards. I was talking to some people, and they were like, "That was offensive." I said, "Explain this to me. Like how you referred to Daryl was offensive." I said, "Well, I can tell you. I know Daryl wouldn't find that offensive because he's my brother. I don't see him as a color. That's not who he is,
Right.
That's not his defining characteristic in my book, So explain this to me. And they were talking about it, and they were saying you should see our blackness and you should see whiteness and all that. And I said, okay. I said, this is really sounding like the movement to me. And I said, I'm not saying that to be offensive, but it reminds me of the movement because everything was about white, this, white, that, white, white, white. And now I'm hearing it from the other side. So I'm asking, okay, let's just so I can wrap my head around this and understand what you guys are saying. Tell me, I said, if you were talking to a friend and you were referring to me, would you refer to me as Jeff or would I be white Jeff? Oh, you would be white Jeff, was the answer. And I said, boy, this really sounds like the movement to me. But, thanks for taking the time to explain it, et cetera, et cetera. And I was polite about it, and they were polite. Nobody was rude or nasty about it. But it was really unsettling to me because it's like, that is not our defining factor. And Daryl Davis has a great answer about how he tackles this stuff. He says, there's nothing wrong with saying white pride, black pride, or things like that. But typically, when you're proud of something, it's an achievement. We were born this way,
Right.
we're born white, black, whatever. Like that's not a crowning achievement. Crowning achievement is you won the track race, or you
That's right.
got a trophy in your football team, or whatever, or you learned to play guitar really well. Whatever it is, whatever it is that you succeed in, those are your crowning achievements. If your crowning achievement is the color you were born, like that is not really, you can say white pride, black pride, whatever. It's not offensive. It doesn't bother me, but it's like, but that shouldn't be your crowning achievement. I always think of that conversation because Daryl has a great way of putting things.
Oh, he does.
I love that example. But what we're seeing and what you're asking about, I see as reciprocal radicalization. So people are getting of this mindset where it's all about their tribe. And what that is a way to divide people.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
dividing us on skin color and things like that. And who does that? The Nazis do that. So when I hear that, I call it garbage. When I hear that stuff, that's where my mind goes. It's like, you can say you're on the left, you can call yourself woke, you can say whatever you want, but that's the same racism that I used to peddle. So,
Yeah.
Why not just call it what it is?
Yeah, you can dress it up however you want to, but yeah, ultimately at the end of the day, I don't think it's useful. I mean, like I said, we had a great conversation. I think deep down in like I said, that former guest heart, I don't see him as what I would consider a racist, but some of these people, and he even admitted, some of these folks on what is termed as the dissident right are driven by hatred. And I don't think it's useful. I think anything, even with good intentions. I mean, I see plenty of people on the left that use identity politics all day long. I don't think they necessarily are driven by hate, but that identity politics thing, no matter who's using it, and no matter which immutable characteristic you're using as an identity factor, I think ultimately, Jeff, that you and I can probably agree, anything that's driving that wedge, that us versus them wedge, driving people into their own tribes or their own silos or whatever you want to call it, is not helpful, especially when it comes to hate and radicalization, because it's not useful, and our human instincts take over, and then we just start to hate the other side.
And you're right. It's not, most of them would probably, there's some that are driven by hate. And I experienced that in the movement too. But there's a lot of people that will say, no, it's not about hate. It's about loving your people and loving who you are and that sort of thing. And I don't think the intentions of a lot of the people that engage in it are malicious from the get-go. Now, there is those types, but even when I was in the movement, my intentions weren't to be hateful or to be malicious. It was noble intentions, wrong intentions, but the mindset was that I was doing something noble, and that's what a lot of the people involved in it do. So when I, speak out about that kind of stuff, I don't want to villainize the people, and that's why I said I want to be careful how I address it. But
for sure.
At the same time, it's important to show people and demonstrate how that can be divisive and how that can lead to other things. And it can lead to, fear, hate, and so on, especially when you start getting siloed like that or getting in those echo chambers. Now this is my tribe and I don't want to see anybody outside of it or talk to anybody outside of it. And those are the first steps towards radicalization. So just because someone thinks that way doesn't mean they're going to become radicalized, but these are the steps that are heading in that direction. So it's certainly something to be concerned about.
No, that's absolutely right. No, I couldn't agree more. All right, Jeff, this, again, our time, as it always does, has flown by incredibly fast. So, so final notes on the book that's coming out. Again, the book's ready for pre-order. Jeff, take us home with a couple parting words. Last thing you want people to know about this book, American Nazi: From Hate to Humanity.
Well, we just put it up on jeffschoep.com. You can get it directly from me. I can autograph it for anybody or write notes in there, whatever you guys like. So you can get it from jeffschoep.com directly, and I'm happy to autograph it, personalize it for you. And I think it's everybody that's has read parts of the book or that has read the advanced copies so far have explained it in ways like riveting, compelling, raw. I'm getting a lot of these kind of feedback. It's something that you're probably not going to be able to put down, and you're going to keep going in it. And it's I don't want to toot my own horn too much on it, but check it out. We've got the first chapter up on my website. You can read the first chapter, make up your own mind, and see what you think. And if you like it, it's available now for pre-order, and it'll be out June 24th, and we'll rush those orders out to you right away. So it's been an honor again to be on the program, Wilk. It's always good catching up with you, brother, and I'm so inspired by the work you're doing with Braver Angels and the good things you're doing out there. And of course, the show is awesome. So thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, you're always welcome, brother. Take it easy, Jeff Schoep, and make sure you check out the show notes, because in the show notes there will be links to our previous episodes. And yeah, we'll see you again. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Friends, if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. Share it with your friends, share it far and wide. And of course, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe right from our website so you can get the Derate The Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. So this is Wilk wrapping up for the week, saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. If there is something that you would like to share with me, you can catch me on most social media platforms, or you can email me directly, wilk@wilksworld.com. With that, my friends, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.